Fresh from the showcase here at SwissWatchExpo, we've got a couple of 47mm Panerai Oro Rosso Radiomir, and I'm going to show you what the differences between them are. They're fascinating watches. So we have the Panerai Radiomir 1940 on the right, and we have the original Radiomir on the left. So really the difference between these two watches is one of style. Either one works exactly the same way. They have the same exact movement in them. It is the P3001/10, and I'll get to that in a moment, why this is probably my favorite Panerai movement that's ever been made. But just looking at the style of the two watches, this is the original Radiomir design. So you have this cushion-shaped case, the slender wire attachments on the top and bottom where the strap attaches. You have this conical crown, not the big crown guard that you see later on the Luminor Marina. And this has always been viewed as the dressier version of a Panerai. This is from the original 1936 prototype that they made for the Italian Royal Navy. They wanted something that could be completely submersible, but really easy to read, even in low light conditions. So when you look at this dial, it's a very simple dial. It's the hallmark of Panerai. And even though the sandwich dial here has off-white lume in the daytime, it of course glows bright green for the superluminova that it's equipped with. So it's a simple dial. When you look at this one, it is marked on the dial that it's a GMT, so it tracks 2 time zones. And other than that, it really just has the time, the date, and a small second hand. But the watch is so big at 47mm that it looks like there's a lot of negative space on the dial. Operating it is super easy. You just unscrew the crown. It's real easy to use because the shape of the crown. Of course, position 1, you're in the wind position. This does have a 3-day power reserve, so that's 72 hours. And on the back, and I'll show you this again in a minute, but there's a power reserve indicator and it shows 1 to 3 for the power reserve as you're winding it. To track with a second time zone, you just pull out 1 click and you move the time zone that you're currently in. So as you travel, you can move it forward and backward. The seconds hand is still going, so it doesn't mess up your time. And then it leaves behind the GMT hand that tracks the time at your home time zone. So most of the time, you'll probably leave them lined up, or if you like to see 2 time zones at once all the time, you can have it like that. This is also incidentally how you change the date, similar to Omega and some of the other watches that are out there on this GMT where you can independently manipulate the hour hand for your current time zone. That's also how you change the date. And then we just screw the crown back down. So the strap on this one, it matches perfectly with the blue dial and the sort of off-white lume that it has this ecru stitching. It's a beautiful strap, thickly padded. Of course, it's the rose gold buckle as well. Now, the rose gold on this, people will ask a lot of times, is it the same thing as pink gold? It's really not. Panerai calls it gold tech. It seems like all of the watch companies now have their own patented formula for their rose gold so that it doesn't diminish in intensity of the color over time. But the Italian, they're calling this red gold, and it does have a higher copper content than typical pink gold. Typical pink gold is 22.5% copper, 75% gold. This is a little bit higher, but the balance is made up by platinum, so it gives it that stability where it won't change color over time. Now, the movement is incredible. Penny and I were just talking about this movement. What they've done with this is they've skeletonized the movement where the plates, you can see this gear train right here with this line of rubies. This would normally be a very large plate, but what they've done is made it just as thin as possible to expose as much of the movement as possible. So you can really see the gear train. It gives a depth to the movement that you normally don't see, and almost a 3-dimensional effect. Jonathan said that it's like looking at a city full of skyscrapers. But when you move it, it just also, there's so many surfaces that are finished with different finishes, and there's a high polish to certain areas. It gives a sparkle like a jewel when you move it. It does have the power reserve indicator here. It's 1, 2, 3, and it says days. It's a double barrel movement, so it has 2 mainsprings. That's how they achieve the 72 hours of power reserve. You can see there is no rotor, so it is a manual wind movement. So that's why the 3 days of power reserve would come into play, so that you would know exactly how much room you've got, so you can decide whether to wind your watch or not. I like winding mine every day, but even though it has 3 days of power reserve, I would probably still wind it every day. But it's just such a beautiful movement. It's great that they gave us the sapphire crystals front and back so that you can really see it and appreciate it. Now this one, by contrast, is the Radiomir 1940. And what we see here is, and maybe you can see it better side by side, the case on the 1940 is really much closer to the Luminor case. It's really a sort of a Luminor case without the big half moon crown protector that you saw later, because it does have these more sort of masculine looking, heavier duty looking lugs, but they're still sort of short and stubby. So even though the watch is 47 millimeter, I mean, it is a big watch, let's make no bones about it, but it wears a lot smaller than you would think because of the way on both of these models, the strap can just come straight down. It doesn't have any sort of solid end links you might see on a bracelet watch where it has to go out first before it can come down. It can just go straight down. So it still works even on a smaller wrist. The 1940, you see the thicker lugs, but you also see a larger screw down crown. But this transitional period in 1940, before the Luminor came out, and when the Radiomir had been making changes, this is really a historic case as well. Although the original Luminor maybe has a little bit more of a dressy look, a little more of a historically accurate look, because we're all used to the idea of the 1936 prototype that they did for the Navy. But this one, for me, it checks a lot of the boxes. It does have this deployant buckle, double deployant buckle with the double triggers, and of course the same movement, all of the same features. The dial on this one is what they call sun-brushed brown, and this was a limited edition of 300 pieces. The blue one is a limited edition of 200, so it's amazing that we happen to have both of them at the same time. They're both water resistant to 50 meters, owing to this screw-down crown. It's not quite as deep as you get with the big lever and the half-moon crown protector, but it's a little bit more of an elegant look. It could go a little dressier than a Luminor or a Luminor Marina or a Submersible. With the brown dial, it's really exquisite. It's a great look with the rose gold, and I think either one of them would be a great pick. I would be hard-pressed to decide which one I would pick up, but give us a call here at SwissWatchExpo. We'll be happy to let you know what we still have in stock and talk you through all the choices that you have in our Panerai collection, which is really quite large. So hit the bell, subscribe and like, and give us a call.